Hello, peoples, and I use that term loosely. It's time. We're back again after a short break and some minor technical issues, which we'll talk about towards the end of the show, but it seems we've got them worked out. So, tonight we are doing. Let me get the shout out off the top. This show was specifically requested by William Duncan, and I promised him that I would, give him a shout out for this. And so he wanted a Mage show, and since our Changeling show, the what was it, Dreaming and Lost, turned out to be a lot better received than I actually expected. So we're here tonight with a new guest, Alan Cameron. He's our resident Awakening guy. Say hi, Alan.
Hello.
And our returning guest, Karl.
Hello.
He's our Ascension guy tonight. And so hopefully everybody's going to learn some cool shit this evening. So let's get right off the top here. Oh, and my wonderful co-host, Brother Jacob. I'd love to have him. And he keeps this thing going. He really does. So say hi, Jake.
Hi.
Okay, say hi again.
Hi, Jake.
Okay. Yeah, you glitched.
Did not come through?
Yeah, no, it did. It sort of came through. So, all right, you know the deal. Jake, take it away.
Yeah? Okay. I'm going to throw the first question at Alan, because that...
He's our noob.
Welcome.
Oh, this is not going well.
No, I can't hear you at all, Jake.
Yeah. I am tossing out Ascension frequently, but I guess the base premise, the foundation on awakening magic. What is the concepts behind that? How much did they deviate from what Ascension is all about, reality and changing the nature of reality, and the Ascension war on whose beliefs are going to win out? So what's the base premise of Awakening for as far as their magic works? If you could start us off.
Well, as was mentioned, I'm not super familiar with Ascension, so I'm not sure I can talk about differences. But for me, the main premise for Awakening, what I like to run with is that the characters, the awakened mages, have immense amounts of power, and can they use it wisely? Wisdom is a big part of Awakening. How wise are you in your use of magic? Do you use it casually? Do you only use it for important things? And a secondary sort of theme to the game is that the majority of the Awakened believe that eventually all of humanity will awaken to the mysteries, and so they're there to protect and shepherd humanity until the time that everybody awakens.
So how is that different, Karl, than, say, Ascension?
Okay, well, let's to examine the difference between the magic first before we go into the thematics. I think will be a little easier, because thematically speaking, Awakening and Ascension can be quite similar. But magic-wise, in Ascension, magic is really a byproduct of just the true nature of reality, in that it's based upon the consensus. So reality only works the way it works because enough people believe it works that way. Yeah, it all is tied to belief. That's where Mage the Ascension thrives. So that leaves you openings for everything from super psychics to mad scientist people to to classical wizards and shamans and whatever else your heart may desire. It's quite nice to put it, quite varied to put it that way. But that's the way magic works. So the more enlightened the more powerful you become, the more you realize that the rules of reality and even your own paradigms are bullshit, and it's just pure will, really. You just will things to be. While in Awakening, there's these things called the supernal realms, which I'm sure Alan can go into more detail about than I can. But you have the supernal realms, or the realms supernal, whatever you want to call them, which essentially that mages can draw power from to affect the world, to change it. And, back in the day, the normal world we live in and the supernal realms were intimately connected. But then eventually a bunch of douchebags decided, let's become gods, people. That sounds great. And let's not share magic with anyone else. So they took a shortcut to become gods and basically fucked everything up for everyone else. So magic, as a result, is becoming more dangerous because there's this layer now between the supernal realms and our world called the Abyss, which is basically like the big place of horrible, or not or it's not horribleness. It's not really a place, but in that sense. But it's
you mean the same abyss that is from Wraith?
Not quite, but similar-ish. It's basically a realm of anti-reality. So it basically keeps up what mages in Awakening tell us the lie. I'm not a complete expert. I'm just trying to highlight some of the differences here. So while in Ascension, you basically have just been given the cheat codes to how reality actually works, and you, or at least a variant of them, and you just believe in them strongly enough to be able to do shit. In Awakening, it's a little bit more complicated with the different supernal realms. You have to awaken you have to enter one of them, and from there you get like your path and stuff. So Alan can explain more in detail about that.
Yeah, Alan, can you pick up where he?
Sure. Yeah, there are 5 different supernal realms that the mages draw their power from. When a mage awakens, they go on it's kind of like a dream quest type thing into one of the 5 realms, and their soul becomes intimately connected to that realm, and so the magics from the realm, each of the 5 realms has 2 of the spheres of magic that are associated with it. And so those spheres are easier for you to use if you are tied to that realm. And so yeah, to cast magic, it is not coming from the awakened him or herself. They're drawing the power from the supernal realms and using that power to affect reality. Now, as mentioned, there's this layer that wasn't always there, but someone fucked up big time. And there's this layer, the Abyss, that to reach the supernal realms, you have to reach through the Abyss. And sometimes you pull a little bit of the Abyss back with you into our world, and bad shit happens when that occurs. So
sounds like it.
Isn't that how paradox happens? If I remember correctly.
Yes, that is the mechanic paradox. If you fail in your role spectacularly enough, paradox happens, and anything. A low-level paradox, perhaps your spell twists a little bit. Maybe instead of a red fireball, it's a green fireball, or something like that. If it gets worse, maybe you grow horns or a tail, or your skin turns purple. All the way up
that sounds awesome.
It does.
Yeah, all the way up to the worst types of paradox is you pull one of these abyssal creatures back to Earth with you. And they're generally not too pleased when this happens and want to fuck your day up.
Oh, yeah. You just jerked them out of their home. I'd be a little pissed.
Exactly. And they're waiting for that to happen. They want to come to Earth and fuck things up. That's their purpose in life. So,
okay.
So, yeah, generally if that happens, you've got a bad day.
Well, now that we have highlighted some of the magical differences, just to go back to thematics for a second, I think Awakening in a lot of ways does hubris versus wisdom thing a little, which is also prevalent in Ascension, but it does it. I think it actually highlights that more than Ascension does, even if that is still a core theme in both games. And does it both through mechanics and through the writings or writing or the fluff or whatever you want to call it in Awakening. But in Ascension, one of the you also fight for reality in Awakening, but in Ascension, that's much more openly highlighted. It's a much more grandiose game in scale, right? In Ascension, you can have everything from a street level game of orphans who try to deal with corrupt corporate people and politicians who try to ruin the life for other homeless people, or you can play fucking. Oh, sorry, I don't like this.
Hey, dude, don't worry about it.
Okay, I was just
don't worry about it.
I was just making sure. Anyway, you can have fucking space wizard starships where you fly around in the spirit world space and you shoot dragons and stuff. It can be very philosophical at one time, but it can also become rather silly. Where I think Mage the Awakening truly differs from Ascension from Awakening is that Mage the Ascension, at least to me, and I think that's how it's at least how it is. Maybe it's a little unintended, but Mage the Ascension is more of a game of ultimate creativity than it is necessarily about wisdom versus hubris, or like how you have all with great power comes great responsibility and stuff. You can focus on that, but Ascension can also be a game where you're like being a mage is fucking awesome. Let's build the giant corpse dragon.
That's sort of a difference between the old World of Darkness and the new World of Darkness games in general. And you see that theme in all of the different lines, that the old World of Darkness was a lot more about the world spanning, we better fix this or the entire world's going to die. Whereas the new World of Darkness tends to be more local, more street-based. Like, if we don't end this, our city gets destroyed, not the entire planet. Yeah. You can run either type in either game, but sort of the world and the fluff of all of them. I've noticed in the old World of Darkness tends to be more world-spanning stuff, and the new World of Darkness more local, gritty, street-level type things.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, you might be right.
I think I enjoy both games so far. Even if finding people to run Awakening for me is a bit in a short supply at the moment. But yes. That's you're completely right that's one of the most common differences between Chronicles or New World or whatever we call it this week and the old World, New World of Darkness, whatever games. That's as accurate of an assessment as you can get in most instances. But the other thing I will say that we can turn our attention to outside of the thematics is that. The magic in how it's, while it looks similar on the surface in both games, can be quite different in how it's balanced, executed, and built up. As far as I remember, like we can turn our gaze to mechanics for a second, because one of the most glaring differences is that in Awakening there are 10 arcanums, or spheres, or whatever you want to call them, of magic, whereas in Ascension it's 9, and that 9 symbolism is a pretty big part of the game. So could you tell us about the arcanums? That would be.
I'm only seeing 6 here.
It's 10 arcanums, and that's different, like, magical spheres. So you have death, faith, spirit, forces, prime, and matter and life, and yeah.
Okay,
and space.
so you're not talking about paths then. Okay.
No, paths are different. But they are also that's where actually more of the symbolism comes in from a numerology perspective, because there's a fabled 10th sphere in Ascension, and there's a fabled 6th watchtower in Awakening.
Alan, you were going to say something?
The paths are when I mentioned earlier that you awaken to one of the 5 supernal realms. That's the path you awaken on, and each of them has sort of a different theme to it. For example, the Moros are their primary areas of magic are death and matter. So they tend to be either necromancers focusing on the death, or the ones that focus on the matter tend to be craftsmen. So you get a lot of that in the Moros. Whereas, let's see, what's another example would be the Mastigos. They awaken to the realm of pandemonium with space and mind magic. They get with space magic, they can, scry long distances and teleport and create portals, and mind magic, they can read minds and control minds and stuff like that. So you get a very different feel depending on what path you awaken to.
Yeah. It highlights the difference between Ascension and Awakening, and that paths are, essentially what you're born on, quote unquote, when you awaken. While so your spheres and outlook is much more dedicated by the single moment of awakening rather than what affiliations you have. Because when you awaken in Mage and just realize that reality is subjective, yay, you're still very malleable. So your perspective on how magic is used and what spheres you prioritize can be very quickly changed depending on who gets a hold of you first. If the technocracy comes over to you, despite the fact that you never have studied science in your life, when they're done with you, you're going to believe that you can use science to do amazing things. While if you meet a random necromancer down the street, he's going to be like, yeah, souls of the dead, man. That's where it's at. That's where it's at. But as Alan told us, in Awakening, paths highlight the difference, and it's quite interesting because not only does it essentially dictate your in-clan spheres or arcanums, or whatever you want to call them, as it were, to use a vampire term to make it easier to grasp it. It also there's a lot of mechanical differences, or at least a fluff in the mechanical differences, because in Awakening you got this thing called Mage Sight, which is a pretty nifty catch-all tool for you can just perceive shit. So which usually used in conjunction with a low-level sphere power. So you can so if you are Moros, for example, and you are, that means that you are a master. And that mage, you can just look at if you want to examine an object, for example, with Mage Sight, you will just see, this is actually how sturdy the object is, and this is how much entropic energy is connected to it. So that's how how much of a good condition it is in. But if you play one of those who get life and spirit, when you look at the object to see how well off it is, you see a healthy or unhealthy spirit inside of it instead. Just it becomes a lot of interesting cosmetic differences in that sense, or if you are like the one with forces, you're like, this thing is not going to withstand much force. It's going to be fucked if if you hit it hard enough with a hammer or whatever. So
just 1 second here. This is for the folks that are in the chat. You got a question? Put it in the chat. We will do our best to get that answered for you. Jacob, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm just listening.
Okay, I was going to see if you had something you wanted to.
Experts are back and forth a little bit, so I figured I'd let them continue on.
All right, never mind then. Go on. Either one. Doesn't matter.
Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is that there's a lot of, I think, in a lot of ways.
Alan, tell us about
So, yeah, go ahead.
the paths and whether they're I
Oh, dude, you
Can't-
are really having issues.
remember, but it is set up in Awakening and like kind of. Can you those for who are very
Dude, you are breaking up bad.
Yeah, you cut in and out so much I couldn't even.
I
hear the
can't
question.
understand him.
No,
I think it's
okay.
something about the paths.
Well, like in Awakening, like all the rest of the Chronicles of Darkness games, you have your path, which is what you were born to, and then you have your order, which is sort of what you chose to be. To compare it to Vampire, you have your clan and your covenant. Your clan you were born to, your covenant you chose to be with. So Awakening has similar, your path and your order. So Jake asks in the chat, because apparently his voice isn't working as well, to summarize the different paths and spheres. Okay, let's see if I can pull these off the top of my head. So I've already gone over Moros, who are death and matter. Death is deals primarily with ghosts and entropy. Talking to ghosts, commanding ghosts, destroying objects through entropy, aging them, that type of thing. Matter deals with controlling matter and modifying it. So, making a solid malleable, or making a liquid solid, that type of stuff. Let's see, Mastigos with space and mind. I already mentioned the different things you can do with that. Let's see, third one, Obermos, which have as their two spheres forces and prime. Forces deals with all sorts of different forces, light, sound, heat, all that type of stuff is gravity, covered under the forces arcanum. Prime is the magic of magic. So with the prime sphere, it's good at counterspelling other spells or modifying spells, dispelling magic that's already there, as well as creating new magic items and stuff like that. Let's see, next would be the
Acanthus, I think.
Yes, the Acanthus with time and fate. Time magic, kind of like what it sounds like. Precognition, postcognition, speeding or slowing yourself or others up and down in the time stream.
Like Cult of Ecstasy mages, yeah.
Yeah. Either make yourself run really fast or make someone else run really slow. Things like that, as well as, like I said, pre and post cognition, prophecy, stuff like that. And then fate magic deals with fate. It's magical oaths, curses, and blessings. There is some prophecy type spells in the Fate Arcanum as well. Slightly different kind than the Time Arcanum, but there is some sort of crossover between them. And then the Thyrsus, who deal with life and spirit. Life magic deals with anything living. The healing spells, harming spells, causing someone to have a heart attack. Also, shape-shifting, turning yourself or others into animals, or even other people. Increasing your physical capabilities, making yourself stronger or faster. And then spirit deals with the spirit realm. in the Chronicles of Darkness, the spirit realm, the shadow, is sort of another reality that lays next to ours. The spirits live in, and so the spirit magic allows you to talk to them and control them. Awaken every object has a spirit in it. So a chair has the spirit of a chair in it. You can awaken the spirit and make the chair more chair-like.
I like that.
Using that on a chair isn't all that useful, but you'd also use it on a weapon and make a sword more sword-like, and so therefore it hits better and hits harder. So those are the 5 different paths and the 10 arcanum that go with them.
Now I have a feeling I already know what the answer to this question is, but Into the Wilderness asks, which game is more LARPable? I know what I'm going to say.
Say Awakening is more LARPable than Ascension because Awakening has the advantages as well. At least in the second edition, there's more. You can free cast, unlike what you couldn't in first edition, if I remember correctly. There, everything was you had to know it as a roast, or you couldn't do it. You had if I remember, I might be wrong about that.
No, both all versions of Awakening you can free cast. I think which one is more LARPable. That more depends on what stories you want to tell. Personally, I think it's more LARPable to play the sort of small-scale, grittier games. If you want to play the big world-spanning games, I would find that very difficult to LARP because, I can't, go to Japan to continue a scene if my character teleports there. Whereas, if my character teleports to the next room, I can, give the out-of-game signal and walk over to the other room, I just appeared here, and then continue LARPing. But depending on the type of stories you want to tell, I think either can be LARP just as easily.
I'm going to have to disagree. The rules for Ascension sucked. They are bad.
I didn't think he made a point about the rules for Ascension.
Okay. Well,
he was saying essentially what I also was going to say, in that Awakening, both from a systematic and system and thematic perspective, is more LARPable because it's more concentrated, it's less out there, and it's more street level. So so it's easier to follow up on. It's not like we have the resources to actually, as Alan said, teleport to Japan.
Yeah.
While in Ascension you can do so quite casually, really. It's and the magic in Awakening. Here's the thing: I love Ascension. Ascension is great, but Ascension as a game has some issues. It's more of I think it often can be more of a creative and story exercise than a well-designed mechanical game, because some of the sphere progression isn't necessarily even in each sphere, and some spheres let you do way more at the start than others, and some spheres let you do way more at the ending, and vice versa. And it's also often a lot of storytelling interpretation of what you can do with each sphere level. While Awakening, it's more standardized. It's still a lot of creativity there, but it's more well documented what you can do with each thing. So it becomes it's a little more controlled. So.
A little better balanced, yeah.
It's a little better balanced. It's a little more defined and detailed, so it's easier to run, and it would be easier to translate that to a LARP format, I think. And the rules are, quite frankly, better. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any experience with the Mind's Eye rules for Ascension, so I can't really speak to that.
Yeah, I own the book. They're really bad. And I've always wanted to play a mage in a LARP, but it's just the mechanics just weren't there.
Yeah, there was a couple of friends and I years ago preferred the world and the fluff of the original World of Darkness, but much preferred the LARP rules for New World of Darkness. And so spent quite a few late nights at Tim Hortons coming up with ways to take the rules from the new game and put them into the old game. We never did get a chance to play test them. It would have been interesting.
Yeah, and I guarantee you the Mind's Eye folks would have appreciated it. I'm finding out, talking to some of the Paradox guys, is that yes, they are going to try with Mage, but again, still have issues.
It's just not the easiest game to LARPify, really. It's as I said, I think it's more of a creative exercise than a straight up game in a lot of ways. And that's not a knock. That's just I acknowledge that while I think Ascension is the best of the World of Darkness games, it has some issues in terms of its systems. But then again, that was quite often a common problem with a lot of the World of Darkness games, is that they had a lot of very great ideas and a lot of interesting world things and a lot of interesting concepts to throw about with, but that didn't necessarily translate that well into a game per se. But it would be a great novel, for example.
And a lot of the ideas work better in a sit-down format than a LARP format as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think LARP was sort of, bolted onto the side of the original World of Darkness, but it was never designed from the get-go to be a LARP, whereas the Chronicles of Darkness, or the New World of Darkness as it was called at the time, was designed from the ground up with LARP already in mind. So the basic fundamentals of the system work better with LARP because it was designed that way from the outset.
Now, I think Vampire was also designed to be LARPable. I mean, like I said, the rules for Vampire LARP came out before pretty much any of the other splats that they did, shortly thereafter. But yeah, I mean, I started Vampire LARPing. I have never played Vampire on tabletop. Ever. Not saying I wouldn't. I'm just saying I haven't.
Yeah, I mean, they did come out with the Mind's Eye rules for Masquerade LARPing fairly early on. I have around here somewhere one of the original Mind's Eye books, and mechanics-wise, it is not a very good system.
No.
They did fix a lot of it as the time went on.
Towards the end of the 90s, the rules got rewritten, I think, extensively.
Yes.
And I still have my first edition Mind's Eye books for Vampire and Mage anyway. And then, of course, I think they did one for Wraith too. Yeah, no.
They did one for Werewolf.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about Wraith or Changeling.
Yeah, they did one for all the original Mind's Eye books they had done for all the different. For Wraith, there's actually, Peter, you can find one for Mummy the Resurrection as well.
Oh.
I have a PDF of Kindred of the East, and I know that one of my local game shops has a lot of the old Mind's Eye theater books, and I'm pretty sure that I've seen copies of Mummy and Wraith.
Oh yeah.
In amongst, there used to be that monthly journal where they stuff like that. They got a whole bunch of copies of those too.
If they'll ship south of the border, man, I'll buy.
I'm very surprised that Mummy the Resurrection actually got LARPified. I didn't know that they actually had time to do that. But okay, interesting.
No, but I want to own the book anyway.
Yeah, but that sounds cool. But I'm just I wasn't actually aware that Mummy was ever turned into a LARP. But anyway,
cool.
Yeah. So I wanted to turn to the. I'm just looking at the for a second just to confirm that I'm right. I'm just looking at the Awakening book and how detailed it goes into how much into detail it goes to clarify the magic system for each sphere. So, let's say you have spirit, right? In In Ascension, usually. I mean, it's a little better in the M20 book, but it's not that well set up, to be honest. It usually, like, okay, this is what you can do with Spirit, and it just writes a semi-vague-ish description, and it's like, oh, you could example combine Spirit with these and dear spheres to do these things. But it doesn't, like, go that much into detail about what they mechanically do or anything else like that. It's just like, oh, yeah, you figure it out, in a sense. This is the general parameters. Have fun. While in Awakening, it comes with several examples. Like, for Spirit 1, it comes with, like, 2, 4, 5. It comes with 5, like, but just different example powers for, oh, this is things you can do with Spirit 1. And then it's like, oh, yeah, and here's, like, 7 things you can do with Spirit 2, and so on. Just, like, details, like, a lot of different ideas. So it becomes much more easier to understand what you can do with each sphere, at least if you're new. While in Ascension, it is very much a storyteller's story. It's very much up to the storyteller what you can do in a lot of instances, because it's not that well defined all the time.
Yeah, I think a good third of the Awakening book is just, these are all the spells that you can do with the various, or not all of them, but these are samples of the things you can do with the different spheres. And I think that was sort of one advantage they had in the New World of Darkness, because they pulled the core rules out of the main books for each series and put them in a separate book. They had more space in the book to add things like that, where they didn't have that in the original World of Darkness, because half the book was just explaining the rules of the system over and over and over again for each game line.
Indeed, there's some that's also a point. But I also think there's just a bit of a different design philosophy going in here. Where, as I said, I think Ascension is very much a game of absolute freedom and creativity, and more of a creative exercise than just straight up, okay, let's have the most mechanically well-designed game here. While Awakening tries to encapsulate some of that same creativity, but puts a lot more effort into having a more well-balanced system. You can't make a world-destroying plague at Life 2 like you could in Ascension.
Because I will agree there. From what I remember of the spell rules in Ascension, they were you had a lot more freedom of the types of things you can do, but as you said, that has its own issues, where a starting character can create a world-ending plague.
Yeah, inferior. Like if you do the ritual rules, you have Life 2. I'm like, I want to manipulate. I can manipulate bacteria. It says here, you're like, yeah, you can. You can just. I will make this a really, 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 really dangerous disease.
Yeah.
So you go and just try to design. You can just sit down and you roll, and if you roll well enough, I mean, before you know it, you sit there with. Before you sit there, you sit there with like 50 successes into this whole thing, and I'm like, 50 successes, the godlike plague is what you're going to unleash. Like, yep.
Yeah, Arc Nightmare commented in the chat, Ascension can allow a person to go banana with the spheres.
Yeah, it can allow them to go banana, which Awakening, reigns in a bit more. And I'm not saying one is better than the other. It's just that's just a difference in design philosophy. So I think Awakening is more a game, while Ascension is way more of a creative exercise. And both of those have a lot of merit in each way. I think Ascension is very fun. I mean, at one point I had a mad scientist character. He made a giant war bat. And
awesome.
and the spider, like a necromorph spider from basically, he was like, I wanted to make a psychological warfare tool, and he was the most innocent about this. So he just made a giant spider that, when it attacked people, basically just reanimated their corpses as corpse armor and made it repeat shit, like repeat common phrases.
That's starting to sound semi-shay.
Yeah, that's he was a patron, actually. That's a fun fact. But he called the spider, for example, he called it Mr. Funnyface. And at one point, we got attacked by a guy, a marauder masquerading as a kitsune. And I was like, okay, That would piss me off. That's not nice. You can't just come here and melt people. Send me a
Yes, you
message.
can.
I'm going to send you. I will send you a message, motherfucker. So I went in and I just rolled. I rolled 50 successes to make the fox plague. I'm going to kill. So if I'd released it, I would have killed basically every fox on Earth because I'm just, or in theory at least, I would have been like,
How
yeah,
the
I'm
Kitsune
good.
would have issue with that, I think.
The Kitsune and lots of other people would have issues with me. Animal subgroup. And that's the level of bananas you can go. And all it requires is an ST that's a little bit lenient, and suddenly it can derail itself very quickly, and it still can be like within the system, quote unquote. So that's a lot of that right there can highlight the strengths and in some cases weaknesses of Ascension, in my opinion. Now,
New Wave, just as a side note here, guys, she says that as much as I'm interested in both Mage games, I feel like it might be easier for me myself as a new player to get into Awakening.
Yeah, definitely. Now the one area, like outside of, I think,
What do you think, Alan?
I think it really depends on the type of game that you want. Me personally, I'm the type of player who I love mechanics, and I love playing with mechanics and stuff like that. And so therefore, for someone like me, I think Awakening is a better game to play. There's lots of mechanics that I can play around with, and that's what I enjoy doing in games. Whereas there are lots of people who enjoy the storytelling aspect, and they don't really care about the mechanics. They just want to tell good stories. And in that case, Ascension might be the game for them. It provides more freedom in that area.
It provides more freedom in that area, and it's less constrained by mechanics, so that gives you a lot. But even then, I don't think it's like Chronicles isn't as mechanics heavy and filled with numbers as D20 can be, for example. So
of course,
it's not that mechanics heavy, but it's more well defined. But Awakening can be rather hard to grasp. That's why I say it can be easier to get in as a new player. But if you're more interested in a creative exercise, if you're more interested in just telling a story, you don't give a shit if it's that mechanically well balanced. And Ascension wins. If you compare it to almost any game in that, because it's a huge, glorious, creative mess where you can examine you can do almost anything, or you can do, practically speaking, anything, and you can examine almost any kind of story you want, and it's pretty great for that. Which I like. But one area where I think Ascension actually has Awakening a little bit beaten is in the lore, and that's often what people say. I'm not necessarily saying it's like superiorly written. I just think it has a lot more interesting concepts when it comes to some of the groups. For example, I think it has a better main antagonist group in the technocratic order than the Seers of the Throne.
We're not allowed to talk about the technocracy. You know what happened last time, right?
I mean, I'm a rebel. I will challenge the system. That's interesting.
It will crash our show again, dude. I shit you not.
I mean, they can try.
They did.
But I think that's an advantage. I think the paradigm view is a little bit more interesting than the supernal realms and such. So I think in the lore it can be a little bit, Ascension can be a little bit more juicy at times. If you want to put that lore on paper and actually make decent mechanics for everything, that's not necessarily the same. But if you're just looking at corporate mages who are just basically like they use the power of money to do shit. So that instead of casting a mind spell on people, they just bribe you. Excellent. That you can have a lot of fun with that. That's the Syndicate, for example. So I think that's the one area where I would personally say that Awakening shines over Ascension shines over Awakening. I mean,
Alan, you were gonna say something, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say that's actually true of all the different game lines. Again, it comes down to the design philosophy when they were developing the games. The original World of Darkness, the design philosophy was to create this lore and this world and have the players explore it. And so they built all these enemies and all these factions, and whereas New World of Darkness, they wanted to create more of a sandbox and allow the STs to come up with their own worlds. And again, nothing good or bad about either. They're just different design philosophies. And so,
sorry.
By the way, Art Nightmare mentioned the sandbox aspect of Awakening a little bit ago. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's New World of Darkness in general. That was the one of the design philosophies of the entire New World of Darkness, was to come up with more of a sandbox to allow the STs to come up with their own worlds. And so they give suggestions in the book like, hey, this is what the world may be like. But there's less hard and fast, this is how the world is, go explore it. And again, different games for different people, and neither is better or worse than the other.
Yeah, that's true in a lot of cases. I would argue that some of the New World games are better written than their Old World counterparts, and have as a result more not only better mechanics but also more and more interesting world to bring to it, even if that world is a little more homogenized and sandboxy. Mage the Ascension is also a sandbox. It just isn't as much of a sandbox in the lore department as it is in everything else you do. But yeah, that's a perfectly
Karl,
valid.
This one's for you.
Yeah.
Don't say the T word. We already had some issues with Jake's mic. We sure as fuck don't want to have a repeat of that shit from before. See, New Wave was here for that other show that shall not be named. Both times. Because the first one completely fucked over. And then the second time around, we actually got the show in the can. But there were issues.
So he doesn't want me to say technocracy, is what you're saying.
No, she doesn't want any more problems. So I'm just saying.
So he doesn't want me to discuss the ways of the technocracy and the technocratic union and their technocratic
really
ways
pushing your luck.
and their technocratic philosophy. They don't want any of those things to come up. I will respect it.
I know. It's every time we mention it, something happens. And matter of fact, as soon as you mentioned it the first time, Sabrina started having issues with buffering.
I think we're talking about coincidences here. I love it.
No, ain't no such thing as coincidence, is there? You Mage players already know that. Coincidence isn't an issue.
Someone just used the Fate Arcanum to fuck with us. That's really it. That's the thing. Speaking of Arcanums for a second, there's one thing I have to praise Awakening to do this in Ascension. You can play a Necromancer, like an actual cool Necromancer in Awakening without much issue.
Not a Giovanni, but a real Necromancer.
Like a full-on Necromancer. You can do all the Necromancer things. While in goddamn Ascension, you have to you have to combine spirit and entropy and life, maybe matter to do all of these things. I'm like,
yes, but apparently that's not an issue.
It becomes very much like, okay, if you're going, you have to really specifically get all of these spheres to these specific levels. While in Awakening, you're like, okay, for some, our fate and death thing are now separate, so it becomes a little more distinct. Each of them and makes a little bit more sense, in my opinion, too. And okay, now you can do all the death things. Like, yay! I can deal with ghosts and corpses now. Yay! I don't have a problem at all. Just saying. I just want my undead army.
Yeah, right? Don't we all?
Exactly.
Alan, got any interesting stories from your time playing? Just, give us one really good one.
Oh, jeez. I've been in quite a few different longer-running Chronicles. I'm trying to think of something good here. Okay, so there was Awakening campaign, and the character I was playing was a space master, so teleportation, portals, stuff like that. And his sanctum was inside an old ruin in the Brazilian rainforest. And we had captured another PC at one point, and I had teleported him down to my sanctum and left him there. So he's trying to escape. There are no doors to this place. Why would there be? I'm a space man. I can teleport. So there are no actual exits to this place in the physical world. So this PC spends a couple of weeks in game time raising his spirit magic high enough so that he could cross over into the spirit realm to escape. Crosses over to the spirit realm, walks out of it, comes back to the normal realm, and says to the ST running the game, he's like, "All right, where am I?" The ST is like, "You're in the middle of a jungle. You have no idea where you are." And he's like, "What?" He had figured that he was actually trapped somewhere in the local city, and that he would just walk out and know where he was.
Mm-hmm. My goodness, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he had enough life magic. He transformed himself into a bird and eventually, made his way back home. Wasn't too pleased with me when he got here. So
that's way cool. Jake, you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still listening.
Okay.
Well, my speech is coming through, but
you're doing okay.
Seems to be working now, right at the end.
Well, no, dude, we've still got an hour, man.
Oh, these are 2 hours.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there we go, then.
That's why I was mentioning before the show about us trying to fill 2 hours for the Mummy show.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I must have missed that part. I think I was out having my smoke at that point.
Ask Alan about what the Awakening version of the Tremere is like.
Oh, yes.
The Blood Mages.
Yes, so... Old World of Darkness had the Tremere, the blood magic vampires, and when they came up with New World of Darkness, that was one of the clans that got cut out of Vampire, and I guess there were enough people that were
they got mad about Requiem.
that the Tremere weren't included, that they had to include them somewhere, so now the Tremere are a sect of mages who survive by tearing the souls out of anyone they can get a hold of.
Sounds like Tremere to me.
That sustain their life.
And that elegantly gets me onto something I wanted to actually mention right before the Tremere brought up. Liches. Because Tremere in Awakening, as far as I understand, are kind of like a combination between Reapers, who are... we have to actually discuss the antagonists for a second. But anyway, Reapers are people who steal souls, and Liches are people who are like, I don't want to die. Fuck dying. It sucks. Dying is for losers. So I'm going to do everything I can to not die, which it's more frowned upon in Awakening than in Ascension, where you can do that quite casually, really, like comparatively speaking. But anyway, so Tremere they're great. They're also what's known as a legacy, which is like a sub-faction of mages, as far as I understand. They're kind of like the camps, if you want to use a werewolf, the apocalypse term, or
not quite,
or bloodline.
More similar to a bloodline. Legacies. One of the sort of minor themes in Awakening is deals with the soul, and what legacies are is mages have the ability to shape their own soul, to give themselves certain abilities, and so if you do this, it permanently shapes your soul, and these are known as legacies. So each of the legacies has sort of a theme that goes along with it. The Tremere Liches are one of these legacies. Their theme has to do with stealing and devouring souls. There are other themes. There are other legacies that have to do with perfecting your own body. There's a legacy called the Perfected Adepts, who their whole thing is they want to make their body as perfect as possible. So you gain spell-like abilities that aren't actually spells. They don't cause paradox. They don't cause disbelief. The humanity with if a regular person sees it happening, things don't go there. There's this mechanic called disbelief where if a regular person sees magic, they can unravel it because, hey, that can't really happen. And so, but your legacy abilities don't cause disbelief. They don't cause paradox because you have modified your soul and you are part of, this magic is now part of the fallen world.
Yeah. I think those things are called attainments. You get them either with legacies or
Yes.
when you advance in your arcanums / spheres. So you get it's basically 1 to 5 different powers you add on to yourself. Level 2 you get mage armor, which basically gives you different protections depending on what arcanum in question you have focused on. So death, for example, you entropy basically just slows fucks with incoming attacks, while life while forces you get your forces rating as armor against any kind of physical attack. So it slows down the energy, fire doesn't burn you, and so on. So everything of one of those has different protections that you get, which is a cool one. And then you have other abilities there, you counter spelling or death sight. You can see ghosts now without having to risk anything, and so on, depending on the level and depending on the things. So it's pretty great. It's pretty great in that regard.
A New Wave, this one's for you. You know this better than most. You know I had to come up with some way to bring up the Tremere.
Again?
No, that's I make it my personal responsibility to try and bring up the Tremere at least once an episode, even if it's not a vampire show.
The Tremere are pretty great.
They're awesome.
I can tell you so many stories about the weird ass Dark Ages game I've been running for the past year, where basically the Tremere have become their own sect. So that's a fun story for another day.
That was one of the things that I did like about Requiem, was the ability to do that.
Yeah, that's actually pretty cool for the conversion guide. But that's another interesting mechanical aspect, because in Awakening you get a lot of spell abilities. In addition to casting magic, you get the attainments and you get mage sight and then stuff that passive or other abilities that you don't have to deal with spheres. While in Ascension, for the most part, you just have your sphere abilities. And I mean, considering how bananas you can go with it, that's pretty much enough. But you don't get that many passive or non-spell powers, if any. Which it's I think that's an interesting divide between the two games. I haven't actually gone into the orders at all. We've only just in passing mentioned them and what they're about.
True. Okay, so like I mentioned before, the all of the New World of Darkness games have a you sort of have two different things that you choose. Well, not just two, but the two different things you choose when you're making your character. One is what you were born as, and the other is sort of the affiliation you have, the almost political affiliation. And so that in Awakening is known as your order. They're groups of like-minded mages that tend to look at the world the same way. So again, because New World of Darkness seems to love the number 5, there are 5 of those, or at least 5 main ones. So you start out with they're known as the Silver Ladder, and they're all about the governance and laws of Mage Society. Mage Society has a whole bunch of laws that you're supposed to follow, and the Silver Ladder are the ones that, track those laws and come up with those laws and all that kind of stuff. They're very social characters, usually. Again, these are stereotypes. You can have,
more of an archetype than a...
Yeah, exactly. So there's the Silver Ladder. There are the Mysterium, who are they're the occultists of the Mage Society. They love studying anything, magic, artifacts, even non-magical stuff. They just like studying. They love books. They're your typical sort of bookworm mage. The Mysterium, they have their secrets.
Aren't they also the ones that think magic is a religion? Like they worship it, or is that another one? I don't know.
No, the Silver Ladder, one of the Silver Ladder's tenets is magic is our birthright. So they tend to think of like it said, magic is our birthright. They figure they were born to this, and they can use their magic however they see fit. Some of the other orders don't really like that point of view. I'll get to them in a second. The Silver Ladder, the Mysterium. The third one is the Adamantine Arrow. They are sort of the militant mages. They often have the combat magics, as well as they tend to focus on physical skills as well. They're your warriors or your generals or your tacticians. Their sort of primary function in Mage Society is to be the defenders of Mage Society. There is the Free Council, who are they're the newest order that came about. The rest of the orders have been around for thousands of years. The Free Council has only been around for a couple of hundred years, depending on who you ask. Because it's a big sandboxy game, they don't put in strict numbers, but so the Free Council, they're the, I don't know how to describe them.
They're basically the ones that base themselves in mortal, the fallen world's culture and science and stuff, right? They're very much more like they're more modern and innovative and like, okay, let's take the rights from cave people in. Not cave people. That sounds very racist.
Yeah,
that sounds very racist. But let's take the rights of Amazonian tribes and mix it with whatever those damned Pepper the Frog wizards do, and we can mix something interesting in here. They don't have as much of they have a much more. They're actually the most similar ones to Ascension mages because they're very much more about mortal beliefs and culture as opposed to just purely focusing.
They're a lot more progressive. And there are sections of them that try to mix magic with technology. So you have your techno mages; they tend to fall under the Free Council. Instead of having strict hierarchies, Free Council run cities tend to have assemblies where everybody gets a vote, and
true democracy.
Yeah, exactly. And then the Fifth Order. Are called they're the Guardians of the Veil. One of the main concepts of Awakening is this concept of the Veil. Mages are supposed to not let humanity find out that magic exists.
Yeah, the Arc Nightmare has already commented. The Mysterium believe that the lie hides magic and that lying about magic hides it even more. But you're not allowed to lie about it to another mage.
Right, yes. And the Guardians of the Veil, one of their duties is to protect or to cover up breaches of the Veil human finds out that magic exists. Well, the Guardians of the Veil are supposed to deal with that. How they deal with it depends on the particular Guardian. The Guardians of the Veil are often looked upon as the secret police of the Mage Society. Not many people trust them, but understand that they need to
serve
do
a
their
purpose.
job.
No neuralizer, none.
Well,
anything in the Mage playbook that allows you to rewrite memories?
Oh yes, mind magic.
Okay. Because that would be a good option to use for that, short of, because when you start killing people off right and left, somebody's going to start noticing.
Probably, yes. So, there are a lot of mind mages that work in the Guardians. So, the other thing the Guardians are supposed to be there for is, as you mentioned before, wisdom plays a big role. Wisdom and hubris play a big role in the themes of awakening. And the Guardians are there to watch out for hubris in other mages and try and stop them from being hubristic. So, yet another reason why a lot of the other orders don't like the Guardians of the Veil, but do understand that they have a job that someone needs to do.
But I think we have forgotten the best, or we left the best order for last. My favorite, Seers of the Throne. They're great.
Well, yes, the Seers of the. Sorry, go ahead.
The Seers of the Throne, and as Anne would probably explain, are the most. They're the standard antagonists, so to speak. They're essentially they serve the Exarchs, who are the dudes you mentioned way at the start of the show, who are the dicks who fucked everything up for everyone else. And they basically like, oh, we will serve the Exarchs. We get magic is our payment for doing that. So we will serve their will and make sure that and fight other mages, basically make the other lives of other mages difficult, and make it so they can oppress the world more efficiently.
More efficiently.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Uh,
I think Alan can definitely add to this.
Yeah, the Seers of the Throne think that, like I mentioned earlier, the one of the themes of Mage is that a lot of mages tend to believe that they're here shepherding humanity towards awakening.
Towards awakening, yeah.
So the 5 orders that I mentioned before are known as the Pentacle Orders. The 5 orders work together, and they all believe that they should shepherd humanity along. And the Seers of the Throne tend to believe that, well, might makes right, and we're better than humanity, so we should be ruling them. We'll make a better world if we're in charge.
But better is a relative term.
Well, of course, yes. Better for them means them being in charge.
Okay.
So like it was mentioned, they're the sort of the standard antagonists for the PCs, who are supposed to be all members of the Pentacle Orders, or maybe not a member of an order. There is
sort of like the T-word guys.
Yeah, exactly.
There's something like the T-word, actually. They actually made a Hunter faction who are very much like act like the technocracy.
That's Hunter the Vigil is for New World, yeah?
Yeah, there's a Hunter the Vigil faction, which is like a compact, which is basically like they're like, oh, those reality deviants mages. Reality deviants, is one of these. Basically, use a lot of technocrat terminology, which they're basically a front for the Seers of the Throne, one of their mortal puppet organizations. So that's that fun little fact there. But yeah,
all right.
The Seers tend to work through non-direct means. They have front organizations, and they let someone else do all the work for them, and they're the puppet masters behind the scenes,
starting to feel
controlling
a
everything
definite
from the
Ventru
shadows.
vibe here.
There is a lot of Ventru in the Seers of the Throne, yes.
So that's pretty great. They're pretty great. But there are other antagonists, which basically leaves us to left-handed mages, which is basically mages that Pentacle and the Seers figure shit.
I saw them mentioned in the Legacy section of the
they're
wiki.
the basic left-handed mages are basically like the quote-unquote evil mages that you can't really. That they're like, okay, you can't really reason well with these people. They're dicks even by our standards. So you have the Mad, who are basically the Marauder equivalent.
Okay.
Yeah, they're very marauderish. It's what happens when you reach Wisdom 0. So you can become this really obsessive, crazy person who, yeah, let's say it's not the best for everyone. And then you have Banishers. Banishers are mages who have either, if I remember correctly, have either had a twisted awakening, so they hate magic now, or they are just people who are like, okay, mages are just going too far. We have to start hunting down their own kind. So they're traitors of the highest order, in a sense. You have Liches, who liches can become liches in a lot of interesting ways. Like either make your body immortal, or some of them turn themselves into ghost mages or spirit mages, like literally a spirit, but they keep their mage powers.
Okay. So
that's actually one of the more interesting things.
Does the Wraith? Do they use the Arcanoi the same as the Wraith the Oblivion guys in the New World? And
they get access to the spirit powers, but they also have access to their mage shit. So
that's what I was thinking. I was like, holy shit, man.
Yeah. So a ghost or a spirit, which is
Oh, you could really do some horrible shit with that.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different mechanical ways to go at it to make a lich. You have Reapers who steal souls, and then I think you have the last ones who actually draw power from the abyss, but I don't know anything about them.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, they are. Oh, and the name escapes me right now.
The Skelisty, I think, or something like that. Something
Celesti, yes, the Celesti.
Oh yeah, I saw them in the Legacy stuff too.
Yes, who are mages who draw their power from the abyss,
heaven, essentially,
and use the abyss to sort of supercharge their spells. Of course, bad things happen, but they don't care. So yeah, those are sort of all the primary mage specific antagonists. When I've been running games, I often I like pulling antagonists from the other venues as well, just because it tends to throw people.
Oh yeah, I would. I'll throw a werewolf into a vampire game in a minute.
Yeah,
I guess Kaidora is one of the great examples of mage antagonists, because they're a hunter group who think they were one of the orders in that would have been a part of the Pentacle, but basically they got backstabbed by everyone else and lost their magic, so they want to take revenge. If I remember correctly, so that's
I'm also seeing another one here, the Bokor. That's like African magic. That's the in general the whole like Santeria or something similar. What is the other version? It's Santeria and Voodoo, which the high level voodoo guys are Bokor.
Yeah, I mean there are a number in World of Darkness, Chronicles of Darkness in general. There are a number of what they the mechanical term is hedge magic. A number of things that are not, which is basically their word for non-supernal magic. So, that includes, from the awakened point of view, that includes the magic of vampires and of changelings, and that's all hedge magic. It's not real magic because it doesn't come from the supernal.
No.
Mages tend to be a little arrogant.
Okay, now I just saw something here I got to hear about. Cult of the Doomsday Clock.
Those are a Celesti group, aren't they?
I believe
they
so.
Are.
Moros, actually.
Yeah. I know a little bit about them. I specifically did not read about them because they were a major enemy in the most recent campaign I was playing in.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't want to be spoiled.
Yeah. But I just love the name.
Oh, yeah.
The name is just right up there. I get,
They basically
I lived through the 80s. I know what the Doomsday Clock is, and it scared the shit out of me as a kid.
Their big goal is to destroy time, essentially, as far as I remember. Like they want let's
yeah, but destroying time would really nerf with the entire system now, wouldn't it?
Well, yes, but that's
Go ahead. Alan?
They have some of the same views that Banishers do. That Banishers in general think magic is bad, all mages need to die. The Cult of the Doomsday Clock take that a bit further. They're like, well, magic is bad. Let's kill everything.
Yeah,
Then
if
magic
everybody
will
dies,
go away.
there is no more magic.
Exactly. So, they just want to take it a step further. If we kill... Because if we just hunt down mages, we can't be sure if we got them all. But if we destroy
Kill
reality,
everything.
we know we got them all. So...
okay, that's kind of cool. Echo Walkers. Obramos.
Oh yeah, but remember, there's like a ton of different legacies for.
Yeah, these are all
listed.
left-handed legacies, by the way.
Yeah. There are so many legacies out there that that one doesn't ring a bell.
Yeah, it's Obramos, and it looks like their path is life.
There's a lot of interesting variations of the different left-hand groups. You have I actually think in one of the historical settings for Mage, the Nagaraha from Vampire the Masquerade are giving a little bit of a reference. They get a legacy in the Chronicles of Darkness Dark Eras book. Speaking of which, that's actually one of the other cool things, because it also helps expand Mage the Awakening as a world, because the orders as we know them are very different in that time, back in like ancient Greece, for example, as compared to the modern day and so on. So it shows some of that continuity they claim to have, like the continuity, I should say, continuity or whatever, like their continued existence for several thousand years into question to an extent, if you want to tackle that. Awakening, you even get to see Stone Age mages, which is pretty interesting.
Well, I was going to get to, it appears that, Mage the Ascension had Dark Age Mage. But for Awakening, it's Mage Noir.
Mage Noir, yeah. Mage Noir is one of the
40s.
Yeah, the 40s. They have also different ones. They have Mage Noir. You have the Sundered World, which is deals with mages back in the Neolithic period. You have a mage, some historical settings dealing with Alexander the Great, conquests and stuff. There's a lot of interesting different time periods.
Yeah.
Alan, have you played a noir game?
I haven't played a noir one specifically. Chronicles of Darkness 2nd edition, which is the ones that are just coming out now, they published a book called Dark Eras, which is sort of a source book on how you can play the game in different time periods. One of them was basically caveman mages.
Yeah, it's what the Ark Nightmare talking about, the Neolithic era.
Yeah, the orders don't
That's
exist
cool
at that
idea.
point. The path, so your path becomes much more important. What you awoken to, and of course, because a lot of even though the mages are drawing down this magical power from the supernal realms, it's still shaped by their experiences. So modern day mages, their spells are still shaped by modern day ideas, whereas a caveman has much different ideas on how the world works than a person from modern day. So their magic follows that.
Jacob, you said you know who that is?
Who?
Ark Nightmare. I think Jacob cut in for a second there and said he knew who that was. Okay, guess not. Moving on.
Moving on, I also brought in the Dark Earth one, and that's actually where I would say that Mage is very similar to Awakening is similar to Mage the Ascension, because Dark Ages Mage has a very different system and feel to it. And
Well, everybody believed in magic then.
yeah, exactly. And we actually legit believe it. Like, it's not
Yeah.
like, magic could be possible. No, magic was a recognized fact.
So paradox was not as big an issue.
Paradox didn't exist in the Dark Ages.
Oh, I sound like I think I heard that. Yeah, during one of the main shows.
Paradox is actually a rather recent thing to happen to the world in Ascension. In Dark Ages, magic worked differently in the sense that, both mechanically speaking, how it was separated because of how belief focused it is. The different mage orders had different spheres essentially, because they were instead of okay, you have forces and matter and shit, they were okay, you have the battle sphere, so you have the sphere of secrets and shit. So they combine different effects from different spheres and shit. So that's an interesting thing, and so you could cast magic a little bit differently, and it was all very much more mystically
enlightened.
Not enlightened, but mystically tilted. So a lot of the spheres we have are very scientific in a sense, because they're very you have forces and you have matter in your life. It's not the same divide in each of it. They don't have the same.
Yeah, well, time wasn't necessarily a thing for most of these folks, other than we harvest wheat at this time. But as far as the manipulation of such, it would be most of your unenlightened or ascended would not have an idea, time. This is what you can do.
The different concepts were that's developed, or some were more developed in different ways. Yeah, there's a lot of different small differences, and. What Dark Ages made was overall not that. It wasn't put that much time into it, but it was more fantasy. It was more fantasy than the very urban not horror, but urban-ish kind of modern take on magic that Ascension and Awakening are. So that's actually another example of as he mentioned, belief shaping magic, which is the core principle of the entire Ascension game. So of course it goes way more into the belief shaping part than Awakening did in its historical settings.
Okay. Yeah, some of these legacies are cool. At least the names are cool.
Yeah. Give me a bit of a second. I have to just.
Yeah, do what you got to do. Alan, you say you're not as familiar with all these legacies? I would.
Well, I mean, there are just so many of them that
I'm seeing a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I know some of the ones that have come up in the different games I've played in, but if a particular legacy had never come up in game, I may know that the name exists, but I may not know anything about the legacy itself.
Now, what about these legacies that are both right and left-handed?
There are some legacies that they are not strictly left-handed legacies. Like I mentioned earlier, the soul plays a big part, or not a big part, but plays a part of the theme of Awakening, and there are certain things that empirically harm the soul. It is not, it doesn't have to do with your beliefs or anything like that. There are certain things in the new world of darkness that you do this, it is bad. The universe said so. It harms your soul. So there are legacies that do those things and therefore are left-handed. Then there are legacies that people think are bad, but they aren't actually doing things that harm the soul. So those are the ones that could be left or right-handed, depending on the person viewing it. They are not necessarily left-handed legacy. Sort of has more than one meaning. It means those legacies that harm your soul. It also means legacies that people think are bad.
Okay.
So
here's another cool name: Dreamers of the Black Sun.
Yeah, there is one thing I like about World of Darkness in general, both old and new, is the writers of it come up with really cool
good
names.
Oh yeah, and there sometimes, and I have this on good. This is not rumor, is that there were some substances involved.
I would imagine there were, yes. So,
of course, I can't say who or and what, but
Yeah. Although saying that about cool names, one habit that I don't like that the writers of World of Darkness do is using the same word to mean different things in different editions.
It can be very. Yes, that has actually come up in a couple of shows.
Oh, fuck that. Oh, yeah. So,
yeah, it has come up more than once.
That shit is the worst thing in the world. And do it in both Chronicles and...
because the difference between a path, as far as, vampire shit, and a path in mage shit are completely different.
Path, it's in everything. I can use an example from both to be topical here. Okay, so you have Arcadia, which is in Mage the Awakening, is one of the supernal realms, which is a place, and at the same time is more of an ideal of a place. It's a bit complicated, but it's basically like, it's a realm where the Fae live. It's the realm of time and fate. So so it's like idealized fate, but at the same time, nobody can actually physically go to the supernal realms unless they become like an archmage. If you're not, you can't get there. Impossible because of the abyss and shit, and the exarchs being dicks. But then you have Arcadia in Changing the Lost, same continuity here, which is the realm where the true Fae live, who are not supernal beings and do not deal in supernal magic. And so you have two names that deal with almost exactly the same things, except they're not at all the same. And I'm like, oh shit, how do you deal with this?
And then, specifically with Arcadia, the people at White Wolf said, well, you decide whether they're the same place or not. We're not going to say.
Yeah, at that point, you start just flipping them off.
Right. And New Wave, some of these would make great band names, metal bands specifically, but there are a couple of names here that would make just in general band names really awesome, like Lords of the Inanimate. That's an awesome name. It really is. And if you ever needed a name for your band, go to the White Wolf Wiki. You're good.
You will definitely find a band name there. You will definitely find
random pages there. You'll find good band names.
Even if you just combine two names to make it the ultimate band name, so you don't have to worry about copyright.
Right,
no,
there you go.
wouldn't have to worry about copyright because these you can't. Okay, well, I'm not going to say it that way because that would be completely wrong. But some of this stuff, there's no way in hell they would ever take you to court over, if you should decided to name your band, Path of the Book or whatever. They really wouldn't care.
Well, and I mean, White Wolf does take their names from folklore and real world examples as well. So there is you could always say, oh, well, I didn't name mine after the White Wolf, blah blah blah. I named it after the ancient Mesopotamian, blah blah blah.
Yeah, exactly, and that's all you'd have to say. But White Wolf has gone after motherfuckers who, specifically infringe upon their copyright. And there was a wrestler for a little while who went by Gangrel.
Yes.
Well,
they jumped his shit.
Actually, I think he had permission to go by Gangrel.
No, he didn't. And that's why he changed his name. Because they sent him a cease and desist.
WWE had an agreement with White Wolf. They were actually going to bring in an entire stable with all the different vampire names at one point. But
they were working on it, but it never worked out that way. And he was using the name prior to getting permission, which is why they got all bent out of shape about it. Now, I'm not a wrestling fan. I only know this because I'm a White Wolf fan. And I had actually seen a picture of this guy because I have plenty of friends that are, wrestling fans. And we talked about Gangrel. Anytime, wrestling and vampire comes up, he pops up, as far as that kind of deal. And I said, but the term Gangrel means anything that appears to be wild. That's the original. Hell, they even use it in the Lord of the Rings movie when Faramir is talking about Gollum.
Mm.
That he refers to him as Gangrel.
But yeah, there's a difference between that and using the term to refer to a vampire type character.
Exactly. And this dude, the wrestler had fangs. So it kind of, was, easy to make the connection. Yeah. And like I said, he changed his name after that. I forget what he switched it to.
No, he's still known as Gangrel now.
Is he?
But
he ain't part of the big...
No, he's not part of the big one at the moment, but he's been like Gangrel for most of his career.
He's been at it since the early 90s, I think.
Yeah, early 90s, late 80s, early 90s ish. But anyway,
back to where we were. Back to where we were talking.
Off topic here.
Yeah, it happens, dude. You do the show often enough, you'll find out we do slide into.
Oh, I imagine
into random tracks. And by the way, since Arcadia got brought up, one of our sister shows is done by a couple of really good guys, Josh Heath and I believe Josh Heath and Victor do that one. It's called Walking Away from Arcadia. So check them out. You want more? Right. You want changeling shit? They got it. They are all over the changeling shit.
Right. Aren't they only doing Dreaming though? Or are they doing Lost? Aren't they primarily doing Dreaming? Or
it's primarily Dreaming.
Yeah. Okay. Just to see if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Well, Victor, dude, he's stuck like most of us in OWD.
It's fine.
It's because we refuse to give it up. That's why it's now back stronger than ever. Is because we refuse to give up, even after the copyright was sold.
Here's the thing with Changeling Dreaming. You say you refuse to give up, but then again, it didn't sell well enough to warrant the third edition originally. But now it's back. It's back and it's for once playable. I'm being as smart as it. I like changing the Dreaming 20th anniversary edition is pretty good. You should all get it and have it to read. It's as crazy as any of the other World of Darkness games. We'll say that much.
Victor says it's one of the darkest.
No, it's darkest. That's besides the point. All the World of Darkness games are dark. It's dark in the sense that whereas all the other games have some level of hope, Changeling doesn't really have.
Had no hope. Yeah.
Literally no hope. You're fucked. Have fun. All the pretty colors and stuff is just a masquerade, so that's fine. I was not really talking about that. It's just you could do a lot of very crazy shit in Changing, and you still can. But you could turn the president. You could make the president admit to the world he was a lizard man, and that actually being the case. In theory, yeah, you could do that. Now you could just turn a werewolf into a puppy permanently. No. Oh, you can.
I know, but man, that would start an argument.
That's exactly the problem. Old World hasn't really thought out the whole interaction between games thing that well. So in one game they're like, okay, only changelings can go into Arcadia, except. In the other game, they're like, Mage just actually found a way.
Yeah, but somebody mentioned it in chat. Is that one of the developers said that the Arcadia from Mage and the Arcadia from Changeling are two different places.
Yeah, that's a very recent development, but overall, that's something that's come about now for second edition. But before second edition, where and this second edition Changeling, That wasn't a thing. So that wasn't defined. So people were like, "Oh, is changing Arcadia and Mage Arcadia the same?" I don't know. You figure it out. Essentially, the answer.
Whatever you want in your game.
Yeah,
Whatever you
page
want.
95, yo. You don't like the rule? Change it.
Yeah.
That's the way it's always been, and I like it.
Yeah, the problem is that's the problem with bringing it up is that rule basically invalidates any kind of, you can't really discuss anything at that point, because like golden rule, the vampires are actually bananas.
Well,
Actually,
it falls to whatever the hell the storyteller says it is.
yeah, exactly. But the problem is that, okay, the storyteller says now that vampires are bananas. You can't really argue with that now, can you? And I'm like, it's true, but at the same time, it kind of limits the enjoyment and point of discussion at times, because you can't really.
But no, I've honestly seen if a player comes up with something cooler than what the storyteller did, then yeah, the storyteller said like, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, I'm not talking about storytellers being open to new ideas or not. I'm just talking about the golden rule as a concept when brought up into discussion. At time, like this, if you like, just let's say it comes up very often in lore discussion for Old World. Like if you're discussing, like, okay, can you have to use an extreme example? Can you have a adventurer who's homeless? And then a lot of people would be like, I mean, sure in theory, but he would be shunned by his own kind and told to get a job and stuff, so you can't just remain homeless. But while others are going to be like, golden rule, the adventurers can be as homeless as you want now. The soldiers could be like, the adventurers start to embrace homelessness as their new career path. I'm like, yeah, sure. I mean, it's nothing in the book indicating that, but I mean, if the storyteller wants to, I mean, whatever. It just makes discussion sometimes a little bit pointless, because you can be like, okay, doesn't matter, golden rule. That's just an observation of that with that, because I'm like, okay, are changing Arcadian and Mage Arcadian the same? I'm like, you figure it out. It's up to you. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't really answer the question now. Like, you have to know. So it becomes a little less defined. So I actually am in favor of the decision overall to separate the two.
Alan?
I mean, I get the point. Yes. You know, if if you're trying to have a discussion about anything, yeah, and this doesn't apply to the World of Darkness, but specifically the World of Darkness. I mean, yes, there is always that rule in all role-playing games that if you don't like it, change it. But if you're trying to have a discussion amongst a bunch of people about the game, you kind of have to throw that out for the purpose of that discussion.
Yeah.
Or everybody has to agree on, okay, we're going to throw this part of all of us don't like this part of the game, we're going to throw that out. Now let's discuss the game without that part.
Yeah, because it's not then, and all discussion just instantly collapse, because anyone can be like, okay, let's bring up the golden rule, and then it's just like, yeah, that's right. I mean, if you don't like it, change it, and then you're like, oh, that ended that fun discussion. So,
sorry.
No, my throat is a little bit parched. I just
okay.
Pour. So I have to just pour some water down this throat. More. Or, I mean, I don't necessarily know if beer helps, but give me a second.
Okay. So, are there, just as a side note here, Alan, is there any of the old world that you really like?
Well, in general, or are we back to Mage? Or
no, we can. In general, we're getting on towards the last 20 minutes, so I think we've covered Mage pretty effectively. And of course, we'll get back to more of it. We still have 20 minutes to kill, but I figured we'll sidetrack a little bit for a minute here. And
I mean, when I'm if I'm coming up with a campaign. There's usually the reason I want to run a campaign. Well, there's two reasons. I mean, one, I want to hang out with a bunch of friends and have a good time.
Absolutely.
But two, there's usually a story I want to tell. I want to explore something. And I'll pick whatever game system helps me explore that the best. So sometimes that may be Old World of Darkness. If I want to explore, if I want to explore a very stratified political structure where, you have your place and you stay in your place, and what happens if you go out of your place, I'll pick Vampire the Masquerade to play that in, maybe. Because that's the type of world it has, and
Yes.
it fits very well to explore that concept. Where, if I want to explore, I don't know, trying to pick an example, something else, maybe Changeling the Lost is a good system to explore this type of story that I want to tell today. And so I don't think it's a matter of which you like. It's what type of stories you want to tell, and pick the best tools to help you tell those stories.
That's awesome, actually. That's a great answer. I'm feeling that. That's awesome. Have you had any interaction with the new version of Wraith? Since that's one of my favorites of the old world, even though I've never played it. I don't know, is that Geist or
Geist the Sin Eaters?
Yeah, I think that's the new Wraith one, isn't it?
Well, I suppose it's the spiritual successor to Wraith. It, out of all the game systems, those two, if they are the sort of the successor to, if one is the successor to the other, is probably the most different. In Geist, you're not playing someone who's dead. You're very much alive, and you have attached to you this very, very powerful ghost who grants you your powers. And sort of the from what I understand, I don't have a lot of experience with it.
It's very similar to Demon.
The old version. I suppose. I don't have any experience with Demon. But in Geist, the whole purpose of the Geists, their job is to help ghosts who are still stuck here to pass on.
Oh.
So that's kind of what they're about, They find the ghosts that are stuck here on Earth, that are still stuck here for whatever reason. They have unresolved tasks, or whatever reason is keeping them here, and they try to help the ghosts pass on to the underworld. So that's really, from what I understand, that is really what Geist is about.
Oh, okay.
Geist is in a lot of ways a game about celebrating life. It's very much a very different take on the whole death theme than Wraith was. Whereas Wraith was, oh, I'm dead, depressing, oblivion, existential dread here, right? Geist is like, okay, we're reborn now. You have a second chance at life. Let's grab it. And it's so, the guys are the most vibrant and active of the supernaturals in World of Darkness. They're very much kind of like supernatural trash culture, because they don't have like a big like society and history to draw on. So they're like, fuck that shit. We will do our own thing. So we will combine biker hazing rites with Amazonian trade mystical rituals and shit. We're going to make that into a grand death ceremony. It's going to be great. So a lot of guys can be kind of ghostbustery and be like, let's go and help ghosts. Or it could be like, let's explore the underworld and stuff and gain power. There's a lot of different aspects to it. It's actually one of the few games that in the power department, in terms of creativity, can rival Awakening. Because there's a lot of different variations what you can do with their powers and stuff.
Yeah, Ark and New Wave are saying that it has some similarities with what New Wave says, but it's very different. And Ark is comparing Geist to Orpheus, which is one of those that I know nothing about.
Orpheus is the stepchild game, is a red-headed stepchild to the World of Darkness game, came in right at the end. Yeah, I mean, people don't like my. I mean, it's not. I mean, Mummy is actually a little less liked, but overall, I think. But Orpheus was a pretty interesting game. I think it carried the legacy of Wraithful on its shoulders, and I was a very. It's rather different. It was more of a It could have been. It was more of a standalone title than the other games were in a lot of ways. Like, you were dealing with ghosts primarily and ghost related shit. While in Geist, you not only deal with that, but you also deal with like people who have made themselves immortal through various dark means and other things like that, and like death gods and shit.
Ah.
Yeah, but yeah, so that's the thing. Speaking of gods, there's actually one thing about Awakening I have not really gotten a grasp about. So Al, you have to answer this. What the fuck are the old gods? I keep seeing them mentioned.
Sorry, what was that? I missed that.
What the fuck are the old gods? The ones that the Exarch replaced, essentially. Kicked out.
Gods. That actually doesn't really ring a bell. I mean,
they keep being mentioned like, oh yeah, there's like a type of archmage, like the alienated archmages who are like, oh, let's worship the old gods and cast out the Exarchs and get them back of the supernal realm and stuff.
I really think, and I could be wrong on this, but I think that is part of the world that was deliberately left vague for the STs to fill in however they wish. Because obviously there must have been something before the Exarchs.
Yeah.
But let's not, and we'll call them old gods, but let's not define them any more than that. And then the STs of the particular game can decide how they want to handle that.
Yeah, okay, fine. I think
that's the case.
Yeah, that sounds very much like what they probably have done. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
have we got any last minute questions from the gallery? Be more than happy to get them. Oh, Arc Nightmare. The old gods were once the ones who ruled the supernal realms before humanity started to awaken.
Yeah, that was the part we knew. Like the old gods were in charge of the supernal realms, but that's really it. They're not defined beyond that. Really, they're like, oh, they were in charge, and now they're not. But, have fun.
Yeah, Ark says Father Wolf was hinted to be one.
Father Wolf was a Pangean, not an old god, like a different thing. Like his, which is essentially basically it's a sort of like scene that existed back in the day, when the border marches were a thing, or Pangean, and so essentially it's just a massive spirit, which. It's not really what the old gods are meant to be, are dictated to be, because spirits are sadly confined to the spirit world. Not.
New Wave's got a question. Said she wants to know what both of y'all's thoughts on. We'll throw this to Alan first on the Fallen World Chronicle for Mage the Awakening.
Fallen World. I haven't read up on that one. Some of the newer stuff for Mage, I haven't read up on because I'm not currently running a Chronicle, and so while it may be interesting, I may get a chance to play in it, and I don't want to spoil myself on it.
The Fallen World Chronicle is a fiction anthology, I think. It's like
is it?
Oh, novels like they've done, like the clan novels, etc.
Yeah, it's like a fiction.
Okay. I haven't had a chance to read any of those.
Yeah, I haven't read them because I almost never read the fiction anthologies because I think that
some of it's really good. The Wraith one, the Dark Kingdom, was something about the Dark Kingdoms.
Yeah.
It's one of the best of the fiction that I've read. And
I mean, there's good role playing fiction out there. To say that sometimes role playing writers are not necessarily the best novel writers. That's what I'm or short story writers. I'm just saying that can sometimes be the case, and that's why I'm a burnt child and I shy away from fire, or I fear fire. I read the Eternal Hearts book for vampires at one point. I was traumatized for life. That's
Some of those are better than others, just to be honest.
that's
Okay, got another question here. How do you balance mage when using it in crossover games?
Oh my god.
you don't.
That is.
What do you mean you don't?
That's the answer.
That's bull.
You don't. You can't. You can't efficiently do it. Like even in Chronicles, where there are clear crossover rules. Like one thing is to make them work in a crossover, which is efficient enough. Like you get them in there and you can use the powers. Problem is you can't balance them. It's impossible. Like vampires can't hold a cannon full of them, regardless of what franchise we're talking about. Like I know they're like, oh, but Methuselah's. Yeah, fuck that shit. Mechanically speaking, if you look at the rules, unless a vampire is just going to go to you and do a fist fight, mages can outdo vampires at almost anything.
Almost.
Practically speaking, anything. Like it's just about the only thing they can't do it beat them on is spontaneity, because they need a bit of prep time. But beyond that, mages have all the advantages in the book. Like it really is. Like even in Awakening.
No, I'm laughing at the comment that just popped up in chat. It's fucking. Is it how do you do the crossovers? Alcohol, lots of alcohol.
Yeah.
I mean, that's certainly a way.
Chronicles of Darkness, first edition Chronicles of Darkness. None of the other supernaturals can hold a candle to the mages if it came down to it. And it's actually, and I've brought this up numerous conversations about it. I think it was a problem that White Wolf had, where they made one of the tenets of mage was that mages are supposed to be protecting humanity from the darkness. If that is the case, vampires should not exist in the world of darkness, because it would take one mage finding out they exist and finding out that they prey on humans, and within a week, every vampire on the planet is dead.
I can believe that, but the Nefendi would actually take issue. Just saying.
Well, the family don't exist in Chronicles.
I'm talking New World of Darkness.
Oh, okay.
But that's also the same. But that's also the same issue. Like if you look, there's a lot of. This is a bigger problem in Old World and in Chronicles. In Old World, if you look at the different factions, like if you look at the different games, a lot of the different shit you see wouldn't be possible. Like the Giovanni could not survive in a world with Wraith. Because the fucking Stygia would come so that hard on their asses and would destroy them. Like and so on. It's just like if you suddenly have like an organized evil bunch of incest necromancers who are like, yeah, let's enslave them in the millions. Like the fucking Wraith Society is going to hammer them down so quickly. And you have mages and people like, the Tremere went to war with the Order of Hermes and won twice.
Okay, we got another question here. This one's for both of y'all. We'll throw it to Alan first. Favorite Arcana Sphere and favorite tradition?
I can just take this first because I can be quick about this.
Okay.
Favorite Arcana for Chronicles, Death/Spirit. Well, it changes on the day. I like the Seers of the Throne or the Free Council, and of course, Celestia. I like to Yay the Abyss.
Yay the Abyss.
Yeah, the Abyss. Old World, I have this one is a little bit more expansive. It's Spirit again for them, or no, actually Primal Utility. That's a Syndicate Prime version sphere, which is that's my favorite sphere overall. I have Orphans as my overall favorite, or Nameless Mages if you was Awakening. That's because yay freedom and not listening to the man. But out of the traditions, I like the Dream Speakers and not Dream Speakers and Sons of Ether and the Syndicate and the Void Engineers. These are my favorite people. Whoop.
All right, Alan.
I'll I'll try to be brief.
You got time, man. Take all you need.
My favorite Arcanum. It's actually two, because really it's a favorite path. I like the Mastigos with their mind and space magic. It's a nice mix of subtle and vulgar. The Mind Arcanum is one of the most subtle Arcanums in the game. And then, of course, the space is probably one of the most flashy ones. So I like the mix of those two. For the orders, I really like the Guardians of the Veil. I like playing the Devil's Advocate. I like playing the, the sort of the secret police type character. Old world Mage Ascension. Oh, it's been so long. But even back then, when I played it years and years ago when it first came out, my very first character was a virtual adept, who, they combine computers and magic, if I remember correctly, with correspondence, which was Ascension's version of space magic. So I guess that's where I'd have to go there.
Yeah, I virtual adepts for me, and as I have no experience, I can't answer that for Awakening. But yeah, it's either the Cult of Ecstasy or virtual adepts for me.
Both of you, sons of Ether.
I like you, Thanatos.
Yeah, it was Jake.
Surprisingly, yeah, I like you, Thanatos. Tremere annoy me. I like their mage counterparts. But I don't have enough experience with Awakening to really pick and choose any of those. But I would say that the one that Alan mentioned, the kind of sounds like they're kind of up my alley a little bit. So
I'm learning, and I learned quite a bit tonight. I appreciate both of your guys' input on this particular subject, and I hope that William Duncan, when he actually listens to the show, he will have enjoyed it as well. We're coming up on our 2-hour mark, so any last questions, get them in now. If not, we will be back in 2 weeks. We have not got a story. We've not got our last attempt to do a brainstorming session crapped hardcore. So we've had a request for Requiem, since we've talked so much about, the Masquerade. So, but some folks wanted to hear, and that's from more than one person, by the way, who wanted to hear more on Requiem. So, Alan, if you've got anybody that you have in mind who might be able to be your counterpart for that show, that'd be great.
I will
get up with this after the show, and we'll work that out. But I wanted to go ahead and put it on the end of this show, when we put it in the can.
Sure, yeah, it's definitely something we can discuss offline, as it were.
Yes. But yeah, we can. I'm hoping that that might actually be our next show, because I want somebody to actually convince me Requiem would work for me. I want to be honest. So far, it ain't.
I will. I think Requiem has a lot of merits. It does a lot of interesting things. It's a worthwhile game in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it was just I guess it's because I felt it was trying to usurp the place of the Masquerade.
That's why you need to read second edition Requiem, because here's the thing: the first edition games, but in the three first edition games in the Chronicles of Darkness or New World or whatever we're going to call it, had a bit of an identity crisis and tried a little too much to be the new Masquerade or the new Apocalypse instead of trying to be Requiem and Forsaken. Yeah. But it's significantly improved in that department in second, because then they truly step away and redefine themselves and make themselves more unique. And Requiem does that, from everything from discipline mechanics to the way the world functions and shit. So I think it's a good game.
Awesome. Okay. All right, guys, we're at our mark. So we'll be back in 2 weeks. We might have a Requiem show. Not quite sure yet. We'll see how that will... Oh, no, Ark, not a good sign. Ark, and this is going in on the end of the show. It's played Requiem for about 2 years. Worst game I ever played. I likely won't touch it again. Sounds like they're of the same opinion I was when I first saw it. It was just not me. So,
well, maybe that's a sign for the Requiem fans to come out next time to try and convince you.
Absolutely. And yeah, New Wave is she's always talking good things about it, which has given me I think she was one of the original requesters of that particular show, if I'm not mistaken. So, thank you guys in the chat tonight. Appreciate all y'all being here. Please come back in 2 weeks, and go ahead, give us a thumbs up down there if you don't mind, and tell your friends. Tell your enemies. I don't give a shit. Tell every damn body. So, everybody say good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Take care, spike your hair. See you around. Good night.